3, 2.
I got everybody pregnant with Barry Katz and semen.
I'm not comfortable with the tone this is taking.
If you're undeniable, you will not be denied.
If you want to be successful in show business, you get yourself a Jew white manager like Barry Katz.
Being a manager is just turning no's into yeses.
Creating holy shit moments. Undeniable.
You're fucking firing me up, Katz.
I love this man.
Is there anything else I should know?
You're on. What? Now I'm on the air.
Barry Katz, back in the house.
Let's do this.
Welcome to Industry Standard, the podcast that debuted at number 3 on the iTunes charts and has held steady in the top 400 ever since. My name is Barry Katz. This is a very, very special episode in that it is the 100th episode of Industry Standard. We've had a lot of great guests on the show, trying to bring you a peek behind the curtain of what happens in Hollywood. And today we're going to break form because it's a dual podcast. We're actually going to put this up. My friend Jay Mohr, who I've known a very long time, is going to put this up as a More Stories podcast. So it's sort of a double entendre sort of podcast, but for the 100th episode, being the egomaniac that I am, I decided why not have me interview me. Usually, as you guys may or may not know, we begin the podcast with 6 degrees of separation. So, without any further ado, I first met me in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. I was born a poor black child named Navin Johnson. And, sorry, that was Steve Martin in The Jerk. I apologize. Getting my stars mixed up. When I first met me, it was in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. And I always knew there was something out there bigger than myself. I always knew there was a better calling for me than doing the work that people in my neighborhood, people in my town did, digging ditches, working at the post office. I knew from a very young age of watching Jonathan Winters, people like the 2,000-Year-Old Man sketches from Mel Brooks, and watching all Woody Allen specials and listening to Lenny Bruce. I knew that was my calling. And I also knew me when I was a teen, and I studied stand-up comedy religiously. It was important to me. It was the oxygen in my lungs. It was the blood that ran through my veins. I woke up every day wishing and hoping against hope that one day I could be one of those people, try to be a fraction of as brilliant as these people that I watched. So, there's that great old expression, those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach, manage. So I decided to give it a shot in stand-up comedy. I did not go your regular route. I didn't exactly light the world on fire with my stand-up comedy. So what I did instead is I started doing comedy a roundabout way. I started putting on shows in Boston. Is where I got my feet wet in comedy. I have been on stage. I probably have put in about 1,000 hours of stand-up comedy on stage, mostly hosting shows for my clients. My client list is pretty extensive. People like Dane Cook, Dave Chappelle, Anthony Clark, Nick DiPaolo, Dennis Leary, Bobcat Goldthwait, Louis Anderson, Jay Mohr, Daryl Hammond. The list goes on and on and on. But without any further ado, usually the segment's about 20 minutes long, but I really am very excited to talk to myself. You may know me, my guest, if you've ever seen the Dave Chappelle Project, both of you. If you've ever seen the TV show Buddies, mostly that means if you were one of the producers of Buddies, man. The short that Dane Cook did, Spiral, I was the executive producer of that. I was the executive producer of the TV show Action. I was instrumental in delivering Jay Mohr to Joel Silver's office. And I'll have a funny anecdote for you here. Jay Mohr did not want to do the TV show Action. He was doing many movies at the time, a lot of independent movies, and he had moderate success doing those. Movies like Go, movies like Playing by Heart, movies like Paulie. And I'll never forget, I finally convinced Jay to meet with Joel Silver, the executive producer of the TV show Action. And Joel Silver in his office, and it's an amazing office. There's pictures of every movie he's ever done. And Joel Silver did something that I thought was really interesting. He actually had all hate mail that he had ever received framed on his walls. And several of those were actual death threats. And in the movie Commando, I don't know if you listening remember, there was actually an interracial kiss. There was an interracial kiss in the movie Commando. There was a kiss between two people. One was white, one was black. I don't know if you guys remember Ray Dawn Chong. She actually kissed, I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, if I'm not mistaken. But it was an interracial kiss. And it was an interracial kiss in that movie. And a Klansman from the Ku Klux Klan, not the Wu-Tang Clan. That would have been amazing, but I digress. An actual Klansman sent Joel Silver this harsh letter just filled with vitriol and hate, called him a Jew motherfucker, and I'm going to come to LA and shoot your liberal ass by, I won't go into specifics with the racial overtones. It's a sensitive world these days with the race talk, but let's just say it was pretty explicit and brutal the way the Klansman was explaining Ray Dawn Chong in the interracial kiss. There was an interracial kiss with Ray Dawn Chong. And Joel Silver had all his hate mail up on his walls to inspire him. And I was watching all those letters on the walls and looking at all the movie posters. Jay Mohr walked in and explained to Joel Silver, I'm doing movies now. I don't want to do action. Jay turned it down about 3 or 4 times. The bane of my existence is Jay Mohr turning down projects that could have made us both millions of dollars. Hope you guys are enjoying the Jimmy Kimmel show, because that was offered to Jay 14 fucking times. And he said, I don't want to do it. And I said, why don't you want to do it, man? You know, Jimmy Kimmel's a 100 millionaire and Jay Mohr is doing AM radio. But Jay also turned down action, and it was quite a great deal of money. And he would have been the star of the show. So finally, a Hail Mary. Yeah, everyone in life has those Hail Mary moments where you just throw the ball in the sky as hard as you can and say, F it, someone will come down with it or they won't, but I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to throw a Hail Mary with Ray Dawn Chong. So I had Jay meet Joel Silver. I thought if anybody could convince Jay, it would be Joel Silver, a man that made a movie with Ray Dawn Chong, where they had an interracial kiss in the movie Commando, starring about a 10-year-old Alyssa Milano as well. So Jay Mohr said to Joel Silver, look, I just don't want to do television right now. I'm having a very successful run as a movie actor. And Joel Silver said, you know, you have to keep in mind Joel Silver at that time was coming off about 11 $100 million movies in a row. There's just so many to mention. It's the guy was a blockbuster machine, man. And Jay said, well, I just did Suicide Kings. I just did the movie Go. I just did Playing by Heart. And Joel Silver interrupted him and said, who are you, fucking Parker Posey? You want to be Parker Posey, or do you want to make millions of dollars being the star of a TV show? Are you fucking Parker Posey? And apparently Jay Mohr did not want to be Parker Posey because he took the gig that afternoon. I was also executive producer of More Sports, the TV show Hype, The Gray in Between, which I've personally never heard of, and I worked on it. There was a short called 8 Guys, the Jenna Jameson story. In case you're wondering, short is showbiz for we're not good enough to get this regular length. National Lampoon. The International Show. I helped Joel Silver put together the movie Xanadu with Ray Dawn Chong. Jeff Cesario, You Can Get a Hooker Tomorrow Night. I was the executive producer of that. Gary Goldman I've worked with. Kims of Comedy, which is not females named Kim, but I believe Asians. The TV show Hurt Bert. I used to manage Bert Kreischer. I've had a good run, and it's just getting started. I was producer of the movie Employee of the Month. Good Luck Chuck. I worked with Frank Caliendo. I managed him as well. Of course, Jay and I worked very closely together on the the TV show Last Comic Standing. I sat on my reading glasses. I can't even talk right, man. Pretty much anything Dane Cook related, I had my fingerprints all over that. And I will say this about myself. It's a very strange way to make a living, to be a manager, because you're betting on others, sometimes more than they actually bet on themselves. And you have to have that complete faith in your client. Even when they're down, you can never show fear. You can never show depression. You can never have negativity. You have to let them know they're more special than they could ever imagine. Otherwise, some of these people just wouldn't go on. So that's what I've been doing for the last 40 plus years. And I was born in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, which is an old Indian word that means Jews live here. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome me, Barry Katz. Barry, welcome to my podcast. It's called, of course, Industry Standard with Barry Katz. My guest today is Barry Katz. Hello, Barry.
What's up, Barry?
It's good to see you, man. It's like I'm looking in a goddamn mirror.
Oh, it's good to see you, man. Thank you so much.
It's
for
great
having me. I'm speechless.
Well, that would be. Please don't be speechless for the next hour, because otherwise we'll have nothing to put up on the iTunes. Barry Katz, at what age did you realize you had to be in comedy? At what age did you realize, I must be in comedy? I have to be in comedy. I can't be a mailman or a plumber. I can't lay carpet or roofing. I can't surf. What age did you know comedy was your calling?
Well, I knew it at a very young
Sorry,
age.
we're out of time. This has been Industry Standard with Barry Katz. At what age, Barry?
I'm sorry, I just can't.
What's going on? You're laughing like you've been smoking African babinja weed, man. Which one of these guys can go do something for me? Microwave 33 seconds is down the hall on your left in the little kitchenette area there, buddy.
You have a lot of interns.
Jesus, man. The Battle of Appomattox didn't have this many bodies laying around. You do a podcast with Barry Katz. There's 14 young boys following him in tow. Like he's Rufus Wainwright. Let me ask you this, Barry.
Can I finish the first question?
Let's start with the present moment. If you're doing a podcast, I know Jay Mohr does more stories out of his garage on like a card table, like an old Mexican playing dominoes. Why do you have 11 people just to put together a podcast?
Well, I just feel like I love to have interns around because I feel like I want to try to make a difference for as many people as I can, and I never had this kind of thing where they could learn. You know, when I went to see Jay Mohr at Saturday Night Live, it was amazing because you'd be standing next to Kurt Cobain or Steven Tyler or Chris Farley, and you'd be a part of everything, and I felt like I had a back seat to something really special and the front seat, and sometimes I want to have the same thing for these guys who are just starting.
That's pretty amazing. You want to make a difference. You've always wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and you figured for interns the best way to make a difference in their life is get them up at 6 a.m. and record a podcast without paying them. What a schnorr.
And get myself coffee for 33 seconds in the microwave.
Doing everything you can to break the Jewish stereotype. I love that about you and I, the two Barrys. At what age did you know that you had to have some type of career in stand-up comedy?
Well, firstly, I just want to say
thank you, Skyler.
And here's your coffee. I didn't even know.
White guy named Skyler. What are the odds? I thought his name was Anthony.
I didn't know I like coffee, but that's good. No, when I was 4 years old, my dad passed away, and it's a long story, which I won't go into the whole thing. But I used to explore in the basement, and I pulled out a old rusted file cabinet that I broke open. And there were like 50 albums there, and they were all albums of black artists like Louis Armstrong and Nat King Cole, the Supremes, Dinah Washington, Shirley Bassey, and there were only 3 there were only 3.
The other intern has just entered the file. Hello, my love. How are you? I'm Barry Katz. This is industry standard. This is my guest, Barry Katz.
Hello.
So there are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 interns watching guys plug microphones in and talk.
Anyway, so
Overhead, $0. Well, you've got Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week down cold. He said have 20% of the people doing 80% of the work.
Anyway, so I found
Black artists.
all these black albums, and there were 3 albums of white artists in that file cabinet. Jonathan Winters, as you alluded to, Comedy and Tragedy. Smothers Brothers, Crabs Walk Sideways, and Lobsters Walk Straight, and The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was the first gold album that Warner Brothers ever had.
You are correct, sir. And do you remember who introduced Bob Newhart to his wife?
I don't.
Buddy Hackett.
Oh, to be in Nagasaki where the women chew the backy and the men say, whoa, wacky, whoa, Bob, I want you to meet this girl. She's all right.
So when you were a child, you were listening to Louis Armstrong records and Jonathan Winter records. Now, your dad passed when you were 4, so it's hard to imagine a 4-year-old listening to the intricacies of Louis Armstrong's trumpet.
Yeah, well, I found them when I was like about 10 or 11 or 12, and then we didn't have anything to play them on, so I started collecting S&H green stamps, which, if you remember, every time you got $1 worth of stuff in your grocery store, they would put a green stamp in, and you would paste them into these books, and you could redeem them for cash and prizes. And I think the record player was like 33 books of stamps. And so I brought them to the Redemption Center, and I got one of those fold-down record players, brought it home, and started playing Shirley Bassey, Goldfinger, and I just didn't really get into music as much as guys like Jay Mohr did. And so I listened to the comedy. Jonathan Winters was a little bit crazy for me. He was a little out there. Smothers Brothers was cool, but it was musical comedy, and I wasn't quite sure. But Bob Newhart spoke to me because he was doing this dialogue humor where he would carry on conversations with people that weren't there. And even though if you were to play that for like a crowd from Def Jam or a crowd in a Caroline's at a regular comedy club mainstream, they would never laugh as hard. It was like titters. But for some reason, the cerebral comedy of what he was doing really spoke to me, and I wanted to do it.
How much time went by between the time you found your dad's old records and you actually had a record player to play them on?
It was probably about 7 or 8 years, and what would happen during that
8
time?
years of just staring at them without listening to them? Was it really 8 years?
Well,
That's a lot of green stamps, man.
Well, it was a lot of licking stamps and books.
No, was it really 8 years before you were able to listen to the albums?
I think I found them probably 5 to 8 years early, but I really wasn't. You got to understand, it's hard to understand for anybody listening, but when you're 4 years old and a parent passes away, your other parent is like a broken person. They're lost. So part of the comedy in me was always waking up or hearing my mom cry and sneak into the kitchen where I would see her from behind. And you know how when people cry, you see their shoulders moving, and always going up to her and saying everything's going to be okay. So my whole mission in life was trying to make her feel better and make her laugh more, not figuring out how I could listen to the albums. And once I probably got my act together more and was able to be a little more independent, then I could ride my bicycle to the place and redeem the stuff. But I was never going to burden her with getting me anything, because my goal was to make sure that she was taken care of.
So going back to the name of Jonathan Winter's album, Comedy and Tragedy, it was in your very home. Your mom had horrible tragedy, you had horrible tragedy, and your way to alleviate your mom's tragedy was by doing your own comedy for her.
Yeah,
It's very difficult for me now because I have to do a serious interview with Barry Katz.
I'm sorry.
I've locked myself into this this vapor lock.
I'm sorry.
Character.
Sorry,
Now we're
Barry, to
gonna pull
bring
it
you
off.
down.
No, this is inspiring, man.
One of the
This is
things.
inspiring.
So one of the things I say about Jay Mohr and anyone who listens is the fact that comedians are amazing when it comes to drama because of the pain they've been through. I think Jay Mohr, I don't know if he would agree with me or not, I think he could actually consider himself a better dramatic actor than he is a comedic actor.
Absolutely.
And so that's the thing.
Right.
And so Buddy Hackett, what do you remember from Buddy Hackett? You remember things that were dramatic. Don Rickles' Casino, these things that. So I think that's what you feel. You have this hole that's blown through you as a young person, and anybody who has anything going or is going to do really great things. Any comedian out there or artist that's really extraordinary. I can't believe that they're extraordinary without having something really horrible happen to them.
That seems to be the company line about comedians, is that there's that big hole inside them that can only be filled by making strangers laugh. I think Jay might be the outlier on that one. I think he's still searching for what that hole may be, and if you do discover it, please let him know for me.
I think I know what the hole is with Jay Mohr, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on this podcast.
You can always edit it out, man. We got 8 interns, some of them knows the erase button. Nixon had none. Nixon redacted 18 pages. He had 1 intern. You have 11.
Well, what was the thing that Jay Mohr was going through early on in his life that he witnessed in his own home?
Oh, alcoholism and,
Alcoholism.
Child of an alcoholic and
very
people
young
in the
age.
neighborhood making fun of the fact that your mom falls down the stairs
That's
to
right.
answer the back door.
I remember when I was a young kid, it's, boy, this is kind of emotional.
You want me to clear these guys out of here?
No,
I have the power. They're my interns.
I know they are. I just realized how I just realized how Jay Mohr felt early on, because when I was a young kid, there was this girl in my neighborhood. It's the first time, if you're, it doesn't matter if you're a heterosexual, male, woman, gay, straight,
Maybe you're a post-op.
asexual. What it means is the fact that when you're a young kid, you feel something for somebody for the first time at a young age. There's always that first person you feel something in your heart for, who's your age. And there was this girl, there was this girl named Sarah in my neighborhood that I really felt that I was just play with her and hang out with her, and I really felt something special. I knew it wasn't just the usual thing, but I was like 8. And I'd go over there sometimes, and she'd be crying, and I'd ask what was wrong, and she never would tell me. And then one day, I was walking over to her house after school, and at the top of you could see at the top of my street is where the elementary school was. And I saw her mom's Volkswagen Beetle. It was a yellow Beetle just swerving down the street back and forth like a slalom skier goes back and forth, and it's swerving. And the car comes into her driveway, and she drives up on the yard and stops short. And there's a little kid there too, she almost hit. She opens the door, there's a bicycle on the yard. She grabs the bicycle to pick it up. She reaches for it. The momentum pulls her. She does a flip over the bicycle. And the little kid's laughing. But I'm not laughing because I know there's something wrong, but I don't know what's making this woman this way. And then I follow her in and hear her slurring her words and stumbling into her house. And then I see the look on Sarah's face from afar, and she starts crying. And then I know that there's something wrong, and I went back and asked my mom, what does that mean when somebody's falling down? Like, what is that about? And as parents do, they whisper when they talk to you in your own house, even though you're there alone with them. And they say, Barry, she's drinking alcohol. And that's when I knew that was something that I never wanted to do and never wanted to be powerless over. So now I know the hole that was blown through Jay Mohr, and I understand it because I saw it and I witnessed it, but from afar.
Do you think the death of our father was the hole that got blown through you and I, Barry and Barry? When you lose a parent at 4, how much does it lay the groundwork for grief for the rest of your life? Or is that an age where you're able to turn the page and put it behind you because it happens in your cognitive years when you're just starting to have cognitive thought? Are you able to close it behind you and close the book for self-preservation, or is it more damaging to lose a parent at the age of 4?
This is what's weird about me, and
Why I keep looking around the room. You and I are talking to ourselves.
sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge the people here who came here and are making all that money. For me and you, I'm sorry, for me and guys like Jay Mohr, I think that
Ray Don Chong.
and Ray Don Chong, no, I've always felt about myself, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way because I just want it to come across humble, but it's hard to. I've always felt like I was an old soul, like there was something that was more evolved about me in my emotional maturity. My intellectual maturity, I'm like functionally special needs, but my emotional toolbox is I have a lot of tools in there. And so do guys like Jay Mohr. And so when my dad died, I don't believe it really, really crushed me as much as watching my sister self-destruct and watching my mom self-destruct.
That's where the grief was, is watching others.
I think that's where it affected me, but I was able to handle that. And it's the same with every tragedy that I've ever been through in my life, is that I do believe it affected me, but it affected me more looking and watching others. And so when things happen to me, rather than stay there in that area and be around the people that were hurting so much, I went to another city.
Did you ever grieve the loss of your father? Our father.
You know, when you're 4, things happen, you don't really know what would have been. Like my kids at 4 now, like my kids are 8, 9, and 10 now, and they remember everything from when they're 4. I don't remember that much about it. I remember the things I remember is my dad being taken out of the house in a stretcher and screaming and how he was in so much pain.
Your father was screaming?
Yes, because he had Hodgkin's disease, and there's something about Hodgkin's disease that you can eat or drink certain things, and it has a reaction inside of you. And like, for instance, you could have you don't even know this, you could have a glass of wine for dinner, and certain wine could have an effect or something inside you, and it feels like your whole insides are burning. And so those are the things I remember. But did I grieve? Honestly, that's an excellent question, which I've never been asked, and I think I really believe I have not grieved yet for him as much as I possibly should.
I don't think that's something we should beat ourselves up over. I mean, you're 4 years old. So you'd have to go back in time and be in that present moment. You'd have to do a lot of archaeological digging to fully get that emotional toolkit back open again. Maybe sometimes it's best to just leave the past in the past.
Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business. No matter where you are in that part of this journey, it's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you, and I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too.
This is one thing, and I don't know if other people listening and go through this or whatever. When I look around at the faces in this room, these are all
45 of them.
all 45 of them.
You could feel the baseball team.
I mean, that's right. Like
Which one of these guys plays special teams?
We could actually do improv games right now in here. There are certain people in here who are as young as 21 years old, and certain people who are sitting here who might be 30 or something like that.
We call them less successful. 18, 19, 20, you're on your way, kid. 30, you may want to go back to college. For all you 30-year-old interns out there listening, this is industry standard. Switch careers, man. It's not working out. It's not me, it's you.
It's not me.
You said earlier, because I don't really care about your whole intern thing you were about to go into.
No, it's important.
All right. It's your podcast. Ranked debuting at number 3 on iTunes, industry standard. Bottom to remind you how far I've fallen out of the top 40.
It's true. It's true. You look at it. You look at the iTunes ratings. If anybody's out there who's doing a podcast, and like 1 week you look and, or you look one day, it's like number 21. You're like, yeah, I've made it. And then you look again, like 3 days later, and you're out of the top 200, and you're like,
What happened, man?
it's all over. I should just quit the business.
What were you saying about our interns?
I was saying when I look
I'm
around.
Barry. I'm interviewing me. Feel good time.
I wish I could do an impression of somebody.
Get to the story, man.
Sorry. So I look around at these faces and I feel like I'm a peer of all of them. I feel like completely like I am their age and time, but I'm not. And I'm not, and I realize I'm much, much older than them, but I don't feel that way. And so I think part of the thing of tragedies and things that happen as you go through your life and things go farther and farther, I think if you are evolved emotionally and you do realize those things, sometimes, believe it or not, there's a paradox, because I feel less evolved emotionally, because I'd much rather hang with these people than hang with somebody my own age. I just feel like it's like, you know, these people in the room here, they have hope. And you run into most people who are...
Most people our age don't have hope.
Well...
They've settled into the life, the routine. They live without joy. They don't wake up every morning and think, what if we could do this? They wake up and they say, why didn't I?
Yeah.
When you surround yourself with younger people, the future is bright. I think people like Barry Katz and Barry Katz think that way, and I think that's what makes people perennially successful over and over again, is that they never are looking in the rearview mirror thinking about how they got jobbed and how they got screwed over by something. There's always something different on the horizon. There's always another project. There's always another client. And then every time you sync up with that person or that project, you get invigorated, you get a new spirit, you get a new fire under your ass, and you can't wait to get after it. And that's what's so great and so beautiful about show business. There's always another chapter. There's always another page. Frank Sinatra was 80 years old, and he was playing Radio City Music Hall. I mean,
That's right.
The guy was 80. He should be at home scratching himself, yelling at his wife to find the remote and a bowl of oatmeal. But instead, he's playing Radio City Music Hall for 2 straight weeks. And, you know, a part of him had to be excited about that. So I guess in show business, that's what's great. It's not like an athlete. We're at 36 years old, the hamstrings start to go. When you're in show business, when you're an actor, people get nominated for Oscars for the first time in their 70s.
Martin
Landau for Husbands and Wives, was it? It was a Woody Allen movie that escapes me at the time.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that...
Oh, Ed Wood, I mean.
Ed Wood, yes. One of the things you said that's kind of interesting...
Thanks, me.
is the fact that, like, if I were to use... I'm sorry to keep using Jay Mohr as an example, but if I were to use Jay Mohr's parents as an example...
dynamic.
That's another story. He went through that tragedy with his parents, visualizing that. But what's interesting is that his parents really, they were the kind of people that were least active. They moved around. His father raced cars. His mom did a lot of things. My mom just shut down. So what I saw in her was like somebody who literally, if she wanted to visit a neighbor, she would get in her car and drive across the street to a driveway that was 2 doors down and get out of the car.
She live in LA? That's very LA.
No, Long Meadow, Massachusetts.
It's amazing in Manhattan. You'll walk 40 blocks for to pick up a bagel and cream cheese. In LA, you drive from one end of the parking lot to the other. You're like, I'm not going to Petco. It's all the way across the parking lot. Load up the truck. We're on the move, man.
It's true. It's true. I mean,
but you said something interesting early that
I did?
Impressed me and you. You said that when your father had passed when you were 4, your habit was in life when you reach tragedies to move and to go to someplace else where the tragedy, at least the physical manifestation of the tragedy, is no longer in the actual space, the literal space. But you had tragedy, and we talk a lot of show business on Industry Standard, but I don't think a lot of people know the personal side of Barry Katz, myself, and things that I've gone through. You actually lost a wife to anorexia.
Yes,
and you were in your 30s, early 30s, and your wife died of anorexia. It was a very long battle. And she died when you were in Boston, but you couldn't pick up and leave. I know that when Jay Mohr met you, it was in Boston, and it was in that actual house. And I remember me, Barry Katz, I used to always have these one-nighters all throughout Boston, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. And I would have the comics come up from New York, and I'd pay them $900 to do 6 nights of shows. And I would put them up in my house that I had in Allston, Massachusetts. So you actually made Barry, you had the most horrible tragedy. They say aside from the loss of a child, the loss of a spouse is the worst tragedy you could possibly go through. But instead of leaving, going against what you said earlier, escaping tragedy by putting yourself physically in a different place, literally, you actually built an empire from the ashes, and you rose like a phoenix. And I think that's very inspiring. But were you aware of the conscious decision that when your wife died, to build Barry Katz Entertainment from the ground up in the actual place you lived with that woman?
Well, this is one of the most interesting podcasts I've ever done. Where
I mean, we could do fucking bullshit movie credits, but I mean, I think it's about time people realize how goddamn special a person I am. I mean, because one thing about show business, if people aren't talking shit about you, you're doing something wrong. And I don't know anybody that takes more shit than Barry Katz. And I don't think people realize the things that you've overcome in your personal life and come to work the next day with a smile on your face while some comic is complaining that his toilet in his trailer doesn't flush fast enough. And you just buried your bride. And I think that's a very salient point for what we're talking about. And it ties into what you said earlier about leaving the physical space when there's tragedy. But when in the case of the death of your wife, you didn't flee, you didn't run, it was fight or flight. And in that moment, you decided to fight, and you fought for the better part of a decade in the actual literal location of where the death happened.
Yeah, it was this is I don't want to go too long because I don't want to bore people, but so when you're
don't want to bore people or don't want to expose.
You're right, Barry. I'm gonna go for it. So I met somebody really special. Her name was Diane, and I was young. I was 26, and at the time, you don't really understand. I think it's important to share this. For the audience listening out there, if you could pick a random sampling of 100 people in your life, how many of them are experiencing true reciprocal love? The kind of love that you see in the movies, at the end of the movies, the kind of love you hear in love songs.
Out of 100?
Out of 100 random people. Like, Barry, how many people in your life? One. Okay. So
1 in 100 Americans are having true movie reciprocal love.
Yeah. So that means that but everybody in life, the biggest thing in life is like you have to find true love. You have to find it. I mean, if you don't find it, you're a fucking failure. That's what America tells you in every movie, every magazine.
That's what your own heart tells you. I don't think America tells you that. I think that's what your own makeup tells you, because your parents loved you unconditionally, so you're on that fool's errand the rest of your life to find that unconditional love that you were raised with.
Yeah, and so my mom, all through her life after my dad passed away, would talk about the love affair that she had with my dad. That's all she talked about. So to me, that was an important thing when you found that kind of thing. Look, for those of you listening, when you get out of the shower and look in the mirror, I mean, how many of you really love yourself? I mean, I always say, like, naked, I look like a bag of onions.
Man.
I mean, it's like, so if some woman who is a beautiful, smart, charismatic woman is actually going to love me for who I am, I mean, that's like insanity to me. So it's like when you find somebody who cares about you that much and wants to spend the rest of your life with you.
This is Diane?
This is Diane. That's an amazing thing. And so as we were going out and in the process of about to get married, I noticed that a woman who, you know, she was like about 5'8", 130 pounds, and beautiful girl, and she started losing weight, and she started, and you know what happens as a guy. This is another thing that's when you're in these relationships, is that you see somebody losing weight, and the way America works is like they get down to 120 pounds or 118 pounds or 17 pounds or even 15, and you look at them and you're like, oh my God, this girl is like amazing. I mean, she's got like, you could, as I like to say, you could circumcise a small Jewish boy off of them. You know, and you're like, wow, she's really...
I'm not sure that analogy applies to an anorexic, but go on.
I think you're right. And so I was thinking as she was losing weight, wow, she really like is taking care of herself. She really is getting ready for this wedding.
Meaning she's sharp edges, circumcising a boy.
Yes.
All right, I put it all together, man. I confused myself.
I do that to myself a lot, too.
It happened.
So I thought, my God, you know, she's really into this wedding. She's really into me, whatever. And then started getting down to 110 pounds, 105 pounds, and 100 pounds. And I'm like, something's wrong here. And then we got married, and I realized that something was wrong, but I didn't understand what was wrong. And we were in Faneuil Hall in Boston one day, and she was walking, and she couldn't walk anymore. It was like LeBron James in the first game, or
he had cramps,
or the third game.
LeBron.
Yes.
He had cramps.
Yes, cramps.
He couldn't finish the game. He had to stop.
That's right. And so I carried her to the car. I went to the hospital, and I'll never forget this. And again, this is the naivete of my life and who I was as a person then, even though I was 25 or 26. I take her to the hospital. I have no idea what's wrong. And the doctor comes out and he says, Mr. Katz, are you engaged to be married? And I said, yes, I am. No, I'm sorry. I was married at the time. Is this your wife? Yes, it is. He said, I need to talk to you. I said, what is it? He said, your wife is suffering from anorexia, and this is a very serious matter, and you have to work with me and this hospital to help take care of this. I said, what are you talking about, anorexia? I don't know what that is. And he explained what it was. And he explained what had to happen, that she would have to go to a therapist 3 times a week and a medical doctor 3 times a week and monitor everything. But it wasn't getting any better. And I remember the day that she died. She was leaving to go see her parents. And all of a sudden, about a half hour later, I was in the offices where I do my stuff, and I heard her screaming, and she came in, and she was out of breath. She said, I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm out of breath, and then she started having a heart attack right there in front of me.
Literal heart attack.
Heart attack, 23 years old. And
23 years old.
Yeah, and so I had the people in the office call an ambulance. They came in. And I remember them coming in, and they just ripping off her clothes and giving her
CPR.
and taking her out there in a stretcher, and I'm following, and I'm like, I can't believe this is I could never believe that, anybody this could happen. I just didn't understand the seriousness of it. And then following the ambulance, trying to go in the ambulance with him, tell him, no, you can't go, and following to the hospital and calling her parents. And I remember being in that waiting room with her mom when the doctor came out, and he told me that I'm sorry. And I remember saying, what are you sorry about? Because I was just so naive about life at that time. And he said, Mr. Katz, Mrs. Creighton, I'm sorry. I couldn't save her. And I noticed her mom crying hysterically, and I was in shock, and I remember hearing kids laughing and playing, and I remember looking to my right, and there was a soda machine and a candy machine that kids were playing around. And I looked at my mom-in-law crying, and I felt to myself, the circle of life goes on. And even in that moment of horror, I realized that those kids didn't know what happened. Those kids had no idea what just went on in my life. Just like I have no idea what's going on in every single person in this room's life. And so, to tie things in, part of the thing that drove me at that point was I knew that in the end, most people don't care about your life or what's happening in your life. So it's family first, and you got to take care of yourself, but you also got to be in the situation where you can go on, because if you don't go on, you're going to be like the person who left the earth. So, and I know this, and I say this to select people, and I said this in a note to Jay Mohr's wife recently, is that when she lost her mom, is that if the roles were reversed to anybody who passed away, and you're up in heaven, and you look down and you see somebody crying hysterically and losing their way, you're going to want to reach down and shake them and say, listen, celebrate me, take everything about me that was great and drive yourself forward to the next level. Do not mourn me, celebrate me. But most people, they see a tragedy happen when somebody dies, and they just go to the negative place, and they make it as
I don't think that's a conscious choice. It's just the natural act of grieving.
But
But in your case, what I find interesting is you've had two monumental deaths, the death of a parent and the death of a spouse, and one was immediate, and one took place over many years. How long was it when Diane, how long a process was that when you actually are literally watching somebody die in front of you?
I say it was probably a year and a half,
A year and
or 9 months. And to be honest with you, Barry, one of the things about all of our lives that's a really tough thing to see is we watch many people die in front of us. I have represented many artists that I watch, and I know they're dying. There was a guy that I represented named Charlie Barnett, who was the greatest street performer of all time. And
Charlie was amazing.
And he would do these shows in the fountain of Washington Square Park for like 1,000 people around him.
No microphone, nothing. He would just get everybody's attention. There'd be a crowd of 1,000 people. You would think there was a riot going on, but it was just a black guy telling jokes. It was amazing.
And he was a 5'3" guy with just these...
He was in the movie DC Cab.
That's right. And he was Noogie in Miami Vice in the first season. And he had this thing where he had this disorder called, or disability called club fingers, where every single one of his fingers was, the end of it was the size of his thumb. And he was a very, very dark black guy, and his nails were these white half moons that were so you'd see him on stage and he'd move around a lot, and it was like mesmerized. It was like Mummenschanz.
Well done, man. I was rooting around for it.
And Charlie, every time you'd see him,
Mom insurance, man. Leave it to me to come up with a Jewish dance to tie it into a black crack addict's HIV death.
well, thanks for spoiling the story, man.
We're short on time.
Okay, that's a new one for my podcast.
But you knew he was dying.
Well, this is what the thing is. I became a little more evolved as I went along, but I still was naive. And every time you'd see Charlie, he'd be wearing a different clothes. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, everybody wears different clothes. But you never see him wearing that other clothes again. It'd just be a new pair of jeans and a new shirt, and then the next day or 2 days later, that'd be gone, and you'd never see it again. And then you'd ask him, listen, can I come over your house? And he'd never let you come over his house. And you're like, can we hang out together? And you'd never be able to hang out with him. And then you realize that this guy is homeless, living in different places. He's a drug user. And finally, I cornered him, and I said, tell me something about you that I don't know that you don't want to tell me. And he said, you really want to know? I said, yes. Well, you know your friend that performs at the club with me? The guy who was the killer in the movie Ghost?
Rick Aviles, I believe.
Rick Aviles? I said, yeah. He said, well, we're both f***ing drug addicts, okay? And what we do almost every week is we go to the subway at 42nd Street. We get on the train. He goes to one side of the train, I go to the other side of the train. We perform in the train all the way up to Harlem, all the way back to 42nd Street, and we meet in the middle. And we get off at 42nd Street. We find a place in an alley on 42nd Street. And we pull out and dump out all the change and all the dollar bills. And we split the dollar bills equally between us. And we fist fight for the change. And whoever draws blood first gets the change and gets the most drugs to shoot up with that day. And I had never even remotely, I didn't know anybody who put needles in their arms. I'd never even known that. But I'd known around that time that if you share needles, you were going to have a chance of getting AIDS. And when Rick Aviles died mysteriously, I felt that was the reason, and I watched Charlie die that same way, and I couldn't do anything about it. It was helpless. And I tried to do a lot of things for him before he died, like get him on Showtime at the Apollo and Def Jam.
I'll never forget being backstage with Charlie Barnett when I was managing him. And I remember I said to Charlie, you have to keep in mind, to the listeners of the Industry Standard podcast, this was a big comeback. It's the prodigal son returning home, a man that used to shoot heroin in Harlem, and now he's back on 125th Street at the Apollo. It's you could not script a more triumphant return. It makes Rudy look stupid.
And they would never put Charlie.
Why am I interrupting myself? So I said to Charlie, I said, look, this is for television. This is going to be on NBC. This is your swan song. This is your big shot. You're back, baby. And I said to Charlie, you have to work clean. He said, I got it, man. I got it. No problem. I said, you understand, 4 million people are going to watch it. In the black community especially, they're going to embrace you with such open arms, because we all know America loves an apology. America loves a comeback. America loves to see the sick get well. And when you combine all three, you can't script something more dynamic than that. And that was Charlie in a nutshell. And I said to Charlie backstage at the Apollo, you just can't swear. Don't forget, don't swear. You just have to work clean. You don't need to swear. You're so damn talented. He said, I got it, man. I got it. I can't wait.
And I worked with him.
Excuse me, I'm talking. Barry Katz is on the mic, man. And Kiki Shepard was on stage and doing what she does. And I remember the Sandman got rid of some comic. And then finally it was Charlie's turn, and I said, this is it, man, be proud of yourself, and I said, just don't swear. He goes, I won't. And Charlie walked out on stage, and if my memory serves me correctly, his opening joke was, "Look at this right here, he looks like an abortion from a butt f-." That was the first sentence out of his mouth. They have to keep in mind the audience went bananas, and they went crazy, but all the people in NBC will never work with this human being again. It's just a self-sabotaging man. I don't think people realize what I've been through. And I don't think people realize how hard I work for my clients. It's a thankless job being a manager, because the more successful your clients get, the less they need you. You become ephemeral. You become like yesterday's newspaper. If you have a 19, 20-year-old comic or a 22-year-old, if you have a Whitney Cummings or a Dane Cook and you work your balls off for them, and you get Whitney the Whitney Show, and Whitney produces another show, Two Broke Girls, executive producer of Two Broke Girls, she created it. Then all of a sudden they start making $100,000 a week, and they realize, well, why do I have this guy? So eventually you wind up falling on the sword for the very reason these people hired you in the first place. You become a victim of your own success, and that's what I deal with on a day-to-day basis as a talent manager. You raise people up from nothing, you believe in them, you give them hope, and you give them faith, and you give them strength when they don't even believe or have the strength in themselves. And then eventually they get enough money, they get enough power, they get enough success, and eventually that phone calls and your receptionist says, "Barry, it's Dane. Barry, it's Dave. Barry, it's Anthony. Barry, it's Louis C.K. Barry, it's Louis. Barry, it's Bob." And the list goes on and on. And what I have to do in my daily life is affirm and reaffirm that I never wrong these people. It's just the nature of the job of a manager. The more successful you get, the less they need you. And that's the thing. And that's what makes the relationship such a high wire act. Because at any moment, you want to scream at these people and say, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even be in a position to have the financial stability to cut me loose. But instead, I choose to just stay positive. And I will say this about myself. I've never heard myself say a single negative thing about another human being. And that's true. This is me doing an impression of me. I've never in my life heard Barry Katz say a single negative thing about another man, woman, child ever in my life. And I think that speaks volumes to the person. And we could have went through all the credits on industry standard that Barry Katz has, but I think people needed to know that you're good inside and you always lead with your heart. And I think one of the reasons you are disliked, because we're all disliked when we get a certain level of respect. Dane Cook is the most successful comic in the world, but guess what? He's also the most hated. As Reggie Jackson once said, fans don't boo nobodies. And he's not a nobody. He's a big, fat somebody. But the thing with Barry that I wanted to say is, I think what separates Barry from the pack and what makes people have such a visceral response to just the name itself, Barry, is that you are, and I am, one of the few managers, and maybe it's because I went through such tragedy as a child, maybe it's because I buried a wife, maybe it's because I watched people die around me. I don't have time for bullshit. And I will look someone in the eye and say, I don't think you're good enough. I don't think you're right for this. Should I be a little more gentle with my feelings? Maybe, but it wouldn't matter because people see things and hear things through a filter that benefit them anyway, or a way they think benefits them. So I wanted to have this industry standard, episode 100 with me, Barry Katz, and I wanted to focus more on the man, and I wanted to focus more on the heart, and focus more on the kindness, because I've never met anyone that has gone out of their way to help other people more, ever. And I think that's way more important than a list of credits on an IMDb page. So Barry, thanks for being my guest on my podcast.
Thank you, Barry. This has been extraordinary, undeniable.
It's been undeniable and holy shit moments.
That's true.
You know, there's that old expression, when you walk into a room, the other person on the other side of the wall, you have no idea what they've been through before you open your mouth and walk into that room. And I wanted to get into some of the dirt that we got into, because the next time somebody wants to open their mouth and talk shit about me, Barry Katz, maybe you can listen to this podcast and realize I've been to hell and back, but I still have a positive attitude, and I'm out there working my balls off to help other people. And I don't really want anything as a payback. It's a great life. And as Jay Mohr always says to his sons, and I have always loved this, life isn't fair, but it's fantastic. Did I want to lose my dad when I was 4? No. Did I want to watch my mom die every day because my dad wasn't there? No. Did I want to bury a wife, a bride? No. Did I want every other woman I ever met for the rest of my life know that they're playing for second place because I already put the love of my life into the ground? Of course not. Life is not fair, but it's fantastic. So you just got like lights coming through the blinds, that little ray of light where you can see the dust floating around in your room as a kid. You just got to get those pieces of light and collect enough of them. Put them in your pockets. Put them in your socks. Like I used to put dollar bills in your socks as a kid. Put them in a drawer. You can always go get them and share them. That's what's most important. This is Industry Standard. I'm Barry Katz. Thank you, Barry Katz.
Thank you. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Sorry we're out of time.
That's okay.
Literally.